The curse didn't just promise death, it carved it into his flesh, in glowing blue fractures that burned like frozen lightning. And when the human princess's fingers brushed his cheek in the heart of a forbidden forest, the curse recoiled as if it had been waiting centuries for her touch alone. Welcome back to my channel, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The moon hung full and pale above the ashenwood forest, its light filtering through the twisted branches like a watchful eye. Beneath its glow, Alpha King Andrew Thorne stood at the heart of a silent clearing, his breath ragged, his hands trembling, and the curse etched across his skin burning like molten lightning. He was 24 moons old, and according to the ancient decree carved in blood and bone, he would not live to see his 25th. The curse wasn't a metaphor. Oh no, Andrew had the glowing blue cracks along his face to show for it, spreading from his left temple down to his jaw like splintered ice. His warriors called it the death frost. He called it an inconvenience. After all, how else was a king supposed to cope with impending doom except with a little sarcasm and a painfully dry sense of humor? But even humor couldn't soften the reality. Every healer in the kingdom had failed him. Every oracle had wept. Every witch had fled. Even his wolves, massive creatures with eyes like silver flames, paced anxiously whenever the blue light fractures deepened. Tonight, the fractures had burrowed all the way to his neck. It was almost time. Your Majesty, Gideon, his captain of the guard, spoke from the tree line. The sentinel's voice was steady, but his hand gripped his sword hilt too tightly. Perhaps we should return to the castle. The healers have done all they can, Andrew interrupted, his voice rougher than usual. Which is to say, precisely nothing. Gideon's jaw tightened. Then at least let us. Stand down, Gideon. Andrew's tone left no room for argument. If I'm to die tonight, I'll do it under open sky, not trapped in stone walls like a caged animal. The wolves circled him protectively, three massive beasts with fur like shadows and eyes that glowed silver in the moonlight. They'd been with him since he was a boy, bound to his bloodline by magic older than the kingdom itself. Now they whined softly, sensing what he already knew. The end was close. Andrew exhaled slowly, watching his breath mist in the cold air. 24 years. Not nearly enough time to be a proper king. Not enough time to find a mate, to secure an heir, to do any of the things expected of him. His father had died at 24. His grandfather at 23. The curse had claimed every male heir in the Thorne bloodline for 5 generations. He'd hoped to be different. He'd failed. Another pulse of pain shot through him, and Andrew dropped to one knee, hissing through his teeth. The blue fractures flared brighter, spreading across his collarbone like lightning seeking ground. His wolves growled, low and threatening, as if they could intimidate death itself. Stubborn beasts, he muttered. You'll need to find a new king soon. The largest wolf, a battle-scarred male named Storm, pressed his massive head against Andrew's shoulder and huffed warm breath against his neck. It was the closest thing to comfort a wolf could offer. Andrew's hand found the beast's fur, gripping it tightly. I know. I'm not ready either. Then the air shifted. Andrew's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. He smelled something new on the wind, something that shouldn't be in his forest. Sunlight, river water, and something ancient. The scent was so startling he nearly forgot he was dying. His wolves caught it too. Their heads swiveled toward the eastern path, ears pricked forward, bodies tense but not aggressive. Curious. Gideon stepped forward, hand on his blade. Someone approaches. I can smell that, Andrew muttered, pushing himself to his feet despite the pain screaming through his veins. Who in their right mind would enter the Ashenwood at night? No one in their right mind, Gideon replied grimly. Which means trouble. But Andrew wasn't so sure. The scent didn't carry aggression or malice. It carried warmth, hope, things he hadn't felt in months. Then she appeared. A figure emerged through the misted trees, a young woman with hair like spilled copper fire and eyes the color of autumn leaves. Her gown was a deep sapphire blue, embroidered with silver thread that caught the moonlight, though the hem was mud-splattered and torn. Leaves tangled in her elaborate braids, and dirt smudged her pale cheek. She looked like a princess who'd gotten very, very lost. She froze the moment she saw them. Andrew's wolves froze. The sentinels reached for their weapons. Even the wind forgot to move. The woman's eyes widened as she took in the scene, the wolves, the armed guards, and Andrew himself, a king marked for death, glowing like a cursed lantern in the dark. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she did the last thing Andrew expected. She ran toward him. "Wait." Gideon started forward. "Stop." Andrew raised a hand, halting his guard. "Let her come." "Your Majesty, if she's an assassin." "Does she look like an assassin?" Andrew's lips quirked despite everything. The woman was tripping over roots and nearly losing a shoe with every step. If this was an assassination attempt, it was the worst planned one in history. She skidded to a stop 3 feet away, breathing hard, her eyes locked on the glowing fractures across his face. Up close, Andrew could see the concern etched into her features, genuine, unguarded concern for a stranger. "You're hurt," she said breathlessly. Andrew blinked. Of all the reactions he'd expected, maternal worry wasn't one of them. "I'm cursed, actually." "Hurt would be an improvement." "Then you need help." She took another step closer. "I wouldn't," he started to warn her. But she was already reaching for him. Her hand lifted toward his face, fingers trembling slightly, as if drawn by instinct rather than logic. Andrew wanted to stop her. To tell her that touching him was a bad idea, like sticking one's hand into a lightning storm just to feel something. But her fingers brushed his cheek before he could form a single word. And the world erupted. Not in fire. Not in death. But in light, pure, brilliant, blinding light that exploded from the point of contact and sent shockwaves rippling through the clearing. The cursed fractures recoiled violently, snapping inward as if her touch burned them away. Andrew gasped, actually gasped, as the pain vanished so suddenly he nearly toppled forward. The blue light retreated, fleeing from her fingers like shadows from dawn, leaving only smooth skin in its wake. The woman's eyes widened, her hand still pressed to his cheek. His wolves went silent, staring. The sentinels exchanged looks bordering on panic. Andrew grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to ground himself in the reality of what had just happened. His skin was warm where hers touched it. Alive. The curse had been burning him from the inside for months, and now he felt nothing but her. "What?" he managed, voice hoarse. "Did you just do?" I don't know," she stammered, her autumn-colored eyes searching his face, as if looking for answers written there. I felt like I should, like I had to." But she couldn't finish. Because the ground trembled. Black smoke curled at the edges of the clearing, seeping from the soil like spilled ink. Something ancient stirred beneath the earth, angered, awakened, violated. Her touch had undone part of the curse. The curse wanted it back. A monstrous howl, deeper than any wolf's, tore through the trees. Shadows thickened, twisting into clawed silhouettes that lunged from the darkness with hungry intent. Andrew moved on instinct, pulling the woman behind him as his wolves surged forward to meet the shadow beasts. Steel rang out as the sentinels drew their weapons, forming a protective circle around their king and the stranger who'd somehow saved him. "Stay close," Andrew commanded, his voice carrying the alpha authority that could make even hardened warriors obey without question. The woman gripped the back of his tunic, and Andrew was suddenly, painfully aware of how warm her fingers felt against his spine, even through the leather and fabric. "What are those things?" she whispered. "Manifestations of a very angry curse," he replied, drawing his blade with his free hand. "And apparently, they don't appreciate your intervention." A shadow beast lunged at them, all claws and teeth and writhing darkness. Andrew met it with his sword, the blade singing through the air and cutting the creature in half. It dissolved into smoke with a shriek. But 3 more took its place. Storm and the other wolves tore into the shadow beasts with savage efficiency, their silver eyes blazing. The sentinels fought with practiced precision, their swords cutting through darkness again and again. But the shadows kept reforming, drawn to Andrew, drawn to her. "They're not stopping." Gideon shouted, dispatching another beast. Andrew's mind raced. Shadow creatures didn't just appear from nothing. They were summoned, bound to a purpose. And if they were manifestations of the curse, then they were here for one reason: to restore what had been broken. He glanced back at the woman, still clutching his tunic, her face pale but determined. She wasn't screaming, wasn't fainting, just watching the battle with wide eyes and a white-knuckled grip on his clothing. Brave little thing. Who are you? He asked, deflecting another shadow claw. Alexa, she said. Princess Alexa of Raverin. Of course she was a princess, because his knight couldn't get any stranger. Well, Princess Alexa of Raverin, Andrew said, cutting down 2 more beasts in quick succession. I'm King Andrew Thorne of the Ashenwood. And I think you just made my curse very, very angry. I'm starting to realize that, she said dryly. Despite everything, Andrew felt his lips twitch. Humor in the face of shadow monsters. He liked her already. Then the forest went silent. The shadow beasts dissolved into smoke, retreating as quickly as they'd appeared. Andrew's wolves circled back, flanking him protectively, while the sentinels scanned the tree line for threats. But nothing moved. Nothing except the smoke, which coiled upward like serpents before forming words in the air, ancient script that glowed with the same blue light that had marked Andrew's skin. The thread-bound heart is found. The hunt begins. Then the smoke vanished. Alexa's grip on his tunic tightened. What does that mean? Andrew turned to face her fully, and for the first time, he saw the shimmer of power clinging to her skin, faint, barely visible, but unmistakably there. Old magic. The kind that predated kingdoms and crowns. I don't know, he admitted. But I think we're about to find out. Gideon stepped forward, his expression grim. Your Majesty, the curse is gone, Andrew finished, touching his own face where the fractures had been. For now, at least. He looked at Alexa, really looked at her, and saw the fear warring with determination in her eyes. She'd stumbled into his forest by accident, or so she probably believed, and somehow broken a curse that had killed 5 generations of his family. But curses didn't break that easily. And Andrew was beginning to suspect that this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Princess Alexa, he said carefully, I think you and I need to have a very long conversation. She met his gaze steadily, despite the tremor in her hands. I think you're right. Storm huffed beside them, as if agreeing. And in the distance, beyond the trees, a hunting horn sounded low, mournful, and ancient. The hunt had indeed begun. Andrew's castle loomed against the night sky like a crown of stone and shadow. Alexa had heard stories of the Ashenwood Keep, tales whispered in Ravern's court about the cursed fortress where wolf kings lived and died young. She'd always assumed they were exaggerations meant to frighten children. Turned out, the stories hadn't been dramatic enough. The fortress was carved directly into the mountainside, its towers spiraling upward like claws reaching for the moon. Torches burned along the walls, casting dancing shadows across ancient stone. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, there were wolves. Not just Andrew's 3 companions, but dozens of them, ranging from pups to battle-scarred veterans. They watched from battlements, prowled the courtyards, and lounged near doorways like oversized guard dogs. Their silver eyes tracked Alexa's every movement as Andrew led her through the main gates. Do they bite? She asked, eyeing a particularly large female who was staring at her with unsettling intensity. Only if you deserve it, Andrew replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. They're quite intelligent. More so than most of my council, if I'm being honest. Despite her nerves, Alexa smiled. The king had been cracking dry jokes since they'd left the forest, as if nearly dying and being saved by a stranger was just another evening's entertainment. She wasn't sure if it was a coping mechanism or if he was genuinely this irreverent about everything. Either way, it was oddly comforting. They climbed a wide stone staircase, flanked by sentinels who eyed Alexa with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. She couldn't blame them. She'd appeared out of nowhere, touched their dying king, and somehow triggered an ancient curse into throwing what could only be described as a supernatural tantrum. Not exactly a normal Tuesday. Andrew pushed open a heavy oak door and gestured for her to enter. My study. We'll have privacy here. The room was surprisingly warm, a fire crackled in the hearth, and thick furs covered the stone floor. Bookshelves lined 3 walls, crammed with leather-bound volumes and scrolls. A large desk dominated the space, covered in maps, reports, and what looked like military correspondence. But what caught Alexa's attention was the painting above the fireplace, a portrait of a man who looked remarkably like Andrew, only older and marked with the same blue fractures that had covered Andrew's face just an hour ago. Your father, she guessed. Andrew followed her gaze and nodded. King Roderick Thorne. Dead at 24, 3 days before my birth. The curse doesn't wait for convenient timing. There was no bitterness in his voice, only resignation. As if he'd long ago accepted that his bloodline was doomed and made peace with it. How long has your family been cursed? Alexa asked. 5 generations. Maybe 6, the records get murky. Andrew moved to a cabinet and poured 2 goblets of wine, offering her one. Every male heir dies before his 20th year. Some make it to 24. Some barely reach 20. My great-grandfather lasted until his 24th birthday before collapsing during a feast. Fell face first into his soup. At least he died doing something he loved. Alexa accepted the wine but didn't drink. That's awful. That's hereditary doom for you. Andrew settled into a chair near the fire and gestured for her to sit across from him. We've tried everything. Blood magic, spirit binding, sacrifices, though not human ones, were cursed not barbaric, and every manner of healer, witch, and charlatan between here and the eastern seas. Nothing worked. Until you. He studied her over the rim of his goblet. His eyes, no longer glowing with cursed light, were a striking amber color. Like honey held up to sunlight. Alexa shifted under his gaze. I don't understand what I did. Neither do I. But the curse recognized you. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Those words in the smoke, the thread-bound heart. Does that mean anything to you? No, she said honestly. I'm not a sorceress. I don't have magic. I'm just... She trailed off, suddenly aware of how ridiculous her situation sounded. I'm just a princess who wandered into the wrong forest. Are you, though? Andrew's tone was gentle but probing. Just a princess? Alexa opened her mouth to say yes, of course she was just a princess, daughter of King Aldrich of Raverin, third in line for a throne she'd never inherit. Utterly unremarkable except for her annoying habit of escaping diplomatic functions to wander places she shouldn't. But the words stuck in her throat. Because the truth was, she'd always felt something. A pull. A whisper at the edge of her consciousness that told her she was meant for something more than endless court politics and arranged marriages. She dismissed it as childish fantasy, the kind of daydream every girl had when faced with a future of duty and obligation. But tonight, when she'd stepped into the Ashenwood, that whisper had become a roar. I felt something, she admitted quietly. In the forest. Like something was calling me. Pulling me toward you. Andrew's expression sharpened. Calling you specifically? Or just drawing you deeper into the forest? To you, she said with certainty. I heard a howl, not threatening, but wounded. And I knew I had to find whoever made that sound. I didn't howl, Andrew said. I was too busy dying with dignity. Then maybe one of your wolves did. Maybe. But he didn't sound convinced. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling fire. Alexa studied the king, really studied him for the first time. He was young, probably only a year or two older than her own 22 years. His blonde hair was tied back, though several strands had escaped to frame a face that was both handsome and haunted. There were shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights, and calluses on his hands that told of a king who fought alongside his warriors rather than commanding from safety. He should have looked weak, having been so close to death just hours ago. Instead, he looked dangerous. What happens now? She asked. Andrew set down his goblet. Now we figure out what that hunting horn meant. And why the curse called you thread-bound. You think it's connected to your bloodline curse? I know it is. He stood and moved to the bookshelves, running his fingers along the spines until he found what he was looking for, a thick volume bound in cracked black leather. This is the Chronicle of Thorns. Every generation records what they know about the curse, hoping the next will find something useful. He flipped through pages covered in faded ink and occasionally smudged with what looked suspiciously like bloodstains. Then he stopped, his finger hovering over a passage near the end. Here. Written by my great-great-grandfather, the first to be cursed. Andrew read aloud, the witch's words, "The Wolf King shall fall before his time, bound by blood and shadow. Only when the thread-bound heart returns shall the curse break or claim its final price. Beware the hunters, for they seek what was stolen." Alexa's breath caught. Thread-bound heart. That's what the smoke said. Yes. Andrew's joy tightened. Which means this curse isn't random punishment. It's tied to someone who was taken. And apparently, that someone is you. But I've never been here before. I've never met your family. How can I be connected to a curse that's 5 generations old? I don't know. Andrew closed the book with a heavy thud. But curses don't lie. They're bound by very specific rules, and if it recognized you, then you're part of this whether we understand how or not. A knock at the door interrupted them. Gideon entered without waiting for permission, his expression grim. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." "Just one?" Andrew asked dryly. "How refreshing." "Scouts report riders approaching from the north. They're not ours, and they're not friendly." Gideon's eyes flicked to Alexa. "They're asking for the girl." Alexa's stomach dropped. "What?" Andrew was at her side in an instant, his presence suddenly protective rather than merely curious. "How many?" "At least 20. Armed and bearing sigils we don't recognize, black banners with a silver thorn." "The Thornwraiths," Andrew said quietly, and for the first time since she'd met him, Alexa heard actual fear in his voice. "They're hunters. Mercenaries who deal in curses and dark magic." "And they're here for me?" Alexa's voice came out steadier than she felt. "They're here for what you represent," Andrew corrected. "The thread-bound heart. Whatever that means, it's valuable enough that someone hired the most dangerous hunters in the realm to find you." Gideon shifted his weight. "Orders, Your Majesty?" Andrew didn't hesitate. "Close the gates. Triple the guards on the walls. And prepare the wolves. If the Thornwraiths want to fight, they'll get one. And the girl stays with me." Andrew's tone brooked no argument. "Under my protection." Gideon nodded and left, already barking orders to the guards outside. Alexa found herself staring at the king, whose casual humor had been replaced by cold, calculating authority. This was the alpha everyone feared, the Wolf King who'd held his kingdom together despite being marked for death. "You don't have to do this," she said. "You don't even know me." Andrew turned to her, and something in his expression made her heart stutter. "You saved my life tonight. Whether you meant to or not, you broke a curse that's killed my entire bloodline for 5 generations. That makes you either the most important person in my kingdom or the most dangerous. Either way, I'm not letting anyone take you." The way he said it, not as a king issuing a decree, but as a man making a promise, sent warmth spreading through Alexa's chest. "Besides," Andrew added, his lips quirking slightly, "you're the first interesting thing to happen to me in months. I'd hate to lose you before I figure out what you are." "I'm a princess who's very lost and very confused," Alexa said. "You're a princess who just rewrote fate," Andrew countered. "There's a difference." Before she could respond, a howl echoed through the castle, long, warning, urgent. Then another. And another. The wolves were raising the alarm. Andrew moved to the window and pulled back the heavy curtain. In the valley below, torches flickered in the darkness, too many to count, moving toward the castle in organized formation. "They're not wasting time," he murmured. Alexa joined him at the window, and her breath caught. The riders weren't just approaching, they were surrounding the castle, cutting off every escape route with military precision. "What do they want?" she whispered. "You," Andrew said simply. "And they'll burn my castle to the ground to get you if they have to." He turned to face her, and in the firelight, his eyes gleamed with something fierce and protective. "But here's what they don't know. I've spent my entire life learning how to fight impossible odds. And I've never lost a battle I actually cared about winning." His hand found hers, warm, calloused, steady, and squeezed gently. "Trust me?" he asked. Alexa looked at this king who'd been dying an hour ago, who'd made jokes in the face of death, who'd stood between her and shadow monsters without hesitation. This stranger who felt somehow familiar, like a melody she'd known her whole life but never heard aloud. "Yes," she said. "I trust you." Andrew's smile was quick and devastating. "Good. Because things are about to get very interesting." Another howl split the night. And then the first arrow struck the castle wall. The castle erupted into controlled chaos. Alexa stood on the battlements beside Andrew, watching as his warriors moved with practiced efficiency. Archers lined the walls, arrows nocked and ready. The wolves prowled below in the courtyard, their hackles raised and teeth bared. And everywhere, sentinels checked weapons, secured gates, and prepared for a siege that had come far too quickly. "How did they find me so fast?" Alexa asked, gripping the cold stone wall. "I only touched you an hour ago." "The curse must have sent out a beacon when it broke," Andrew replied, his eyes scanning the approaching forces. "Like a wound screaming for help. Dark magic always recognizes its own." Below, the Thornwraith riders had stopped just beyond arrow range, their black banners snapping in the wind. Even from this distance, Alexa could see the silver thorn emblems gleaming in the torchlight, stylized and wicked, like a promise of pain. One rider moved forward, his horse midnight black with eyes that glowed red in the darkness. The man wore armor that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it, and his face was hidden behind a mask fashioned to look like a wolf's skull. "That's their commander," Andrew said quietly. "Vesper the Boneless. Earned his name by being able to slip through any defense, any crack, any weakness. He's never failed a contract." "Comforting," Alexa muttered. Vesper's voice rang out across the valley, amplified by magic until it echoed off the mountains. "King Andrew Thorne, we have no quarrel with the wolves of Ashenwood. Surrender the girl, and we depart in peace. Refuse, and we take her by force and burn your castle as payment for our trouble." Andrew leaned casually against the parapet, as if discussing the weather rather than a siege. "Define peace, because historically speaking, your organization and that particular concept aren't well acquainted." A few of his warriors chuckled despite the tension. Vesper's horse shifted impatiently. "The girl is ours by contract, Wolf King. Ancient law binds her to those who hired us. You harbor stolen property." "Stolen property?" Alexa whispered, indignant. "I'm a person. To them, you're a commodity," Andrew replied. Then louder, "The princess is under my protection. And last I checked, kidnapping royalty tends to start wars. How's your mercenary company feel about facing two kingdoms?" "Her kingdom doesn't know she's missing," Vesper called back. "And by the time they realize, she'll be delivered to those who have rightful claim." "Stand aside, Thorne. You're already cursed, don't compound your doom with foolishness." Andrew's expression darkened. "Funny thing about being cursed, it makes you stop caring about threats. I've spent my whole life dying. What's one more battle?" He turned to Gideon, who stood ready at his right hand. "Loose a warning volley. Show them we're not interested in their negotiations." Gideon raised his hand, and 20 archers released as one. Arrows arced through the night sky and struck the ground 10 feet in front of the Thornwraith line, close enough to be threatening, far enough to be a warning. Vesper's horse reared, but the commander controlled it easily. "So be it, Wolf King. We tried diplomacy." He raised his gauntlet hand, and the Thornwraith forces surged forward. "Here we go," Andrew said, drawing his sword. The blade sang as it left its sheath, and Alexa noticed for the first time that runes were carved along its length, old magic, protective wards that pulsed with faint blue light. "What do I do?" Alexa asked, feeling utterly useless. She had no weapon, no training, no magic she understood. Andrew glanced at her, and despite everything, his expression softened. "Stay behind me. And if things go badly, Storm will get you to safety." The massive wolf appeared at her side as if summoned, his silver eyes fixed on her with unsettling intelligence. "I'm not leaving you to die," Alexa said firmly. "I appreciate the sentiment, but..." Andrew was cut off as the first wave of Thornwraiths reached the walls. They didn't use siege ladders or battering rams. They used magic. Dark energy crackled around their hands as they touched the stone walls, and the ancient fortress shuddered. Cracks spread like spiderwebs, and several sections simply crumbled as if aged 1,000 years in seconds. Decay magic, Gideon snarled. They're rotting the walls. Counter it. Andrew commanded, and immediately several of his own magic users, wolves blessed with shamanic abilities, began chanting. Golden light flared along the walls, pushing back against the dark rot, but it was clear they were outmatched. The Thornwraiths had come prepared. An arrow whistled past Alexa's head, so close she felt the wind of its passage. Andrew yanked her down behind the parapet, his body instinctively shielding hers. That was close, she breathed, heart hammering. Too close. His face was inches from hers, his breath warm against her cheek. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Andrew seemed to remember they were in the middle of a battle and pulled back. Stay low. But staying low wasn't an option. A section of wall to their left collapsed entirely, and Thornwraith warriors poured through the breach. They moved like shadows given form, their weapons gleaming with poisoned edges. Andrew's wolves met them first, Storm and his pack tearing into the attackers with savage ferocity. Blood and screams filled the air as beast met mercenary in brutal combat. Andrew vaulted over the parapet and dropped into the fray, his sword cutting through the darkness with practiced precision. He moved like water, fluid, unstoppable, each strike deliberate and deadly. Alexa watched in awe as he fought 3 Thornwraiths simultaneously, his blade deflecting their attacks while his free hand gestured in quick patterns that sent bursts of energy, knocking his opponents back. He was magnificent. And he was losing. More Thornwraiths poured through the breach. For every one Andrew's forces cut down, 2 more appeared. They weren't trying to kill, they were trying to reach the battlements. Trying to reach her. Storm growled at her side, his hackles raised. His message was clear, run. But Alexa couldn't move. She was transfixed, watching Andrew fight with everything he had to protect her, a stranger he'd met an hour ago. Then she saw the archer. High on a distant ridge, barely visible in the darkness, a Thornwraith had found the perfect vantage point. His bow was aimed directly at Andrew's back, and the arrow glowed with the same decay magic that had crumbled the walls. One hit would be fatal. Andrew! Alexa screamed. The king spun, but too slowly. The arrow was already in flight. Alexa didn't think. She just moved. She lunged forward, throwing herself off the battlements and landing hard in the courtyard below. Pain shot through her ankle, but she ignored it, running toward Andrew with speed she didn't know she possessed. Her hand outstretched. Her instinct screaming. The arrow was 3 feet from Andrew's back when her fingers found his shoulder. Light exploded outward. Not the blinding white from before, but something older, golden and fierce, like sunlight concentrated into a weapon. It radiated from Alexa in waves, washing over Andrew and creating a barrier that the arrow struck and disintegrated against. But it didn't stop there. The light continued expanding, rolling across the courtyard like a wave. Every Thornwraith it touched screamed and recoiled, their decay magic unraveling in its presence. The wolves howled in triumph, and the castle itself seemed to glow with renewed strength, the crumbling walls solidifying and healing. Alexa collapsed to her knees, gasping. Andrew caught her before she hit the ground. What in the name of the old gods was that? He breathed, his arms supporting her weight. I don't know, Alexa panted. I saw the arrow and I just reacted. Around them, the Thornwraiths were retreating, dragging their wounded back through the breach. Vesper's voice carried across the battlefield, furious. Fall back. Fall back. Within minutes, the attacking force had withdrawn beyond arrow range, leaving behind only bodies and the acrid smell of dark magic. Silence fell over the castle. Andrew helped Alexa to her feet, his hands lingering on her arms as if afraid she might collapse again. You saved my life. Again. Well, you saved mine first, she said, trying for humor despite how much her body ached. I figured I owed you. I think we're well past keeping score. His amber eyes searched her face. Alexa, what you just did, that kind of power doesn't come from nowhere. You banished decay magic with pure light. That's ancient magic. Primordial. I told you, I don't know how. I believe you, Andrew interrupted gently. But someone does. Someone knows exactly what you are and why you're important enough to hire the Thornwraiths. His jaw tightened. And they're not going to stop. Gideon approached, bloodied but alive. The walls will hold for now, Your Majesty. But those mercenaries will regroup. They'll try again at dawn with different tactics. Then we have until dawn to figure out what's happening, Andrew said. He looked down at Alexa, and something shifted in his expression, concern mixed with determination. Can you walk? My ankle's a bit twisted, but... Without warning, Andrew scooped her up in his arms, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. What are you doing? Alexa squeaked. You threw yourself off a 15-foot wall for me, Andrew said matter-of-factly. The least I can do is carry you to the healer. I can walk. You can argue, he corrected, already striding toward the castle's interior. Storm and the other wolves fell into step beside them, a protective escort. Despite her protests, Alexa found herself relaxing against Andrew's chest. He was warm and solid, and his heartbeat was steady against her ear, strong and alive, no longer marked by cursed death. Because of her. Andrew, she said quietly. Why are you doing this? Really? You could have handed me over and ended the siege. He was quiet for a moment, his boots echoing on the stone corridor. Then, do you believe in fate, Princess? I don't know. Maybe. I didn't. Not until tonight. His arms tightened slightly around her. I've spent my entire life believing I was doomed. That my death was written in stone, and there was nothing I could do to change it. And then you walked into my forest, touched my face, and rewrote everything. He looked down at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. So no, Alexa. I couldn't hand you over. Not because of politics or honor or duty, though those matter. But because for the first time in my life, I actually believe I might have a future. And that future. He paused, as if weighing his words carefully. It feels connected to you. Don't ask me how I know. I just do. Alexa's heart was doing strange acrobatics in her chest. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you just met. Is it? His lips quirked. You literally saved my life twice in one night. I'd say you've already proven you can handle pressure. Despite everything, the battle, the pain, the confusion, Alexa laughed. It was absurd. All of it. She'd wandered into a cursed forest, touched a dying king, unleashed ancient magic she didn't understand, and was now being carried through a wolf castle by said king while mercenaries laid siege outside. Her father was going to kill her when he found out. If she survived long enough to face him. Andrew kicked open a door to a warmly lit chamber where an elderly woman waited, her hands already glowing with healing magic. Mira, Andrew said. The princess needs attention. Twisted ankle, possible bruising from a rather heroic dive off the battlements. The healer, Mira, gave Alexa a knowing look. Another reckless noble throwing themselves into danger. How refreshing. She saved the king, Gideon said from the doorway. Twice. Myra's expression softened. Then she's welcome to my best work. She gestured to a cushioned bench. Set her down gently, Your Majesty. Try not to hover too much. Andrew carefully lowered Alexa onto the bench, and his reluctance to let go didn't escape anyone's notice. I don't hover, he said defensively. You're hovering right now, Mira replied. He was absolutely hovering, standing close enough that Alexa could still feel his warmth. The Thornwraiths will attack again at dawn, Gideon said, pulling Andrew's attention. We need a plan. I know. Andrew's hand briefly touched Alexa's shoulder, just a whisper of contact, but enough to send warmth spreading through her. I'll be back shortly. Mira, don't let her leave this room. As if I could stop a girl who throws herself off walls, Mira muttered. Andrew left with Gideon, though he glanced back twice before disappearing down the corridor. Mira began examining Alexa's ankle with practiced hands, her magic flowing in gentle waves that eased the pain. That king of ours doesn't care about much anymore, she said conversationally. Stopped caring years ago when he realized he was doomed. But he cares about you. He barely knows me, Alexa protested. Wolves don't measure bonds in time, child. They measure them in truth. Myra's eyes twinkled. And something in you speaks truth to him. Old truth. The kind that doesn't lie. What do you mean? I mean that curse didn't break by accident. And you didn't wander into that forest by chance. Mira wrapped Alexa's ankle in soft bandages. You were called. Summoned. Your soul recognized its mate, and you answered. Mate? Alexa's voice came out higher than intended. Mira smiled knowingly. The thread-bound heart, child. You're his fated pair. The one meant to break his curse and bind his soul. It's why you can do magic you don't understand. You're channeling his power through your bond. But we just met. Your souls didn't just meet. They recognized each other. Mira patted her hand gently. Fate doesn't wait for convenient timing. It just is. Before Alexa could respond, Storm padded into the room and laid his massive head on her lap, looking up at her with those unsettling silver eyes. Even the wolves know, Mira said. They've accepted you as their queen already. Queen. The word hung in the air like a prophecy. Alexa looked down at Storm, who huffed contentedly, then at her bandaged ankle, then at the door where Andrew had disappeared. Her life had completely derailed in the span of 2 hours. And somehow, impossibly, she didn't want it back on track. She wanted to know what happened next. Alexa found Andrew on the highest tower of the castle, standing alone beneath the stars. He'd changed out of his battle-worn clothes into simpler dark tunic and trousers, though his sword still hung at his hip. The wind caught his blonde hair, pulling it free from its tie, and for a moment he looked less like a king and more like a young man bearing far too much weight. Her ankle barely twinged as she climbed the stairs. Myra's healing had been thorough. Storm had insisted on escorting her, padding silently at her side like a furry guardian. You're supposed to be resting, Andrew said without turning around. I tried. Couldn't sleep. Alexa moved to stand beside him at the parapet. Too much thinking. Dangerous habit, thinking. But his lips quirked slightly. What about everything? The curse. The thorn wraiths. What Mira said about. She trailed off, heat creeping up her neck. About fate. Andrew supplied. And bonds? And us being somehow cosmically tangled together. She used the word mates. That? Andrew exhaled slowly. In wolf culture, mates are sacred. They're not chosen, they're recognized. The bond exists before you ever meet, written into the fabric of your souls. When you find your mate, you just know. And do you? Alexa asked quietly. No? Andrew was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the Thornwraith campfires flickered like distant stars. I've known I would die young my entire life. It shapes you, that certainty. Makes you careful about who you let close, because why make someone suffer your loss? So I kept everyone at arm's length. My warriors, my council, even my wolves, I cared for them, but always with the knowledge that I was temporary. He turned to face her, and the moonlight caught the amber in his eyes. And then you touched me, and for the first time in my life, I felt permanent. Like I was meant to last. Like I had a reason to survive beyond duty or stubbornness. His voice dropped lower. So yes, Alexa. I know. Her breath caught. We've known each other for 3 hours. I've known you longer than that, he said softly. I just didn't realize I was looking for you until you appeared. The honesty in his words made something in Alexa's chest ache. She thought about the pull she'd felt in the forest, the way her instincts had screamed at her to save him, the ease with which she'd trusted this stranger with her life. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know what I am or why I have power or how to help you beyond, apparently throwing myself into danger whenever you're threatened. Andrew smiled, a real smile this time, not his usual sardonic smirk. That's actually very helpful. Inadvisable, but helpful. I'm serious. So am I. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of copper hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Alexa, you don't need to know how to do anything. You already broke a 5-generation curse just by existing near me. That's more than anyone else has ever managed. His touch sent warmth spiraling through her, and Alexa found herself leaning into it without thinking. What if I can't do it again? What if the curse comes back? Then we'll figure it out together. His thumb traced a gentle line along her jaw. I've spent my whole life planning to die alone. Having someone willing to face the darkness with me it's more than I ever hoped for. They stood like that for a moment, close enough that Alexa could count his heartbeats, could see the faint scars on his hands from years of wielding a sword, could smell pine and wood smoke clinging to his skin. "Andrew," she whispered, "what happens if we survive this? Then I suppose I'll have to convince you to stay." His voice was rough, honest. "Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at politics, mediocre at romance, and apparently still cursed enough that mercenaries want to kidnap my probable soulmate." "Probable." "Definite," he corrected, and there was no humor in his tone now. Only certainty. Before Alexa could respond, Gideon's voice called up from below. "Your Majesty, the scouts have returned." Andrew closed his eyes briefly, frustration flickering across his features. "Duty calls." "Go," Alexa said, even though part of her wanted to keep him there, in this moment, where nothing existed except the two of them and the possibility of something more. He caught her hand as he turned to leave, squeezing gently. "Don't wander off. The castle is safe, but mercenaries are creative." "I know." She squeezed back. "I'll stay with Storm." The wolf huffed his agreement. Andrew descended the tower stairs 2 at a time, leaving Alexa alone with her racing thoughts and the massive wolf who'd apparently decided she was worth protecting. "Your king is intense," she told Storm. The wolf's expression somehow conveyed, "You have no idea." In the war room, Andrew found his inner circle gathered around a large table covered in maps. Gideon stood with 2 scouts, both looking exhausted and worried. "Report," Andrew commanded. The taller scout, a grizzled warrior named Kern, spoke first. "The thorn wraiths have been reinforced. At least 40 more riders arrived an hour ago. They're setting up siege equipment, catapults, scaling towers, the works." "Vesper's not playing games anymore," the second scout added. "They're preparing for a full assault at dawn." Andrew studied the map, calculating angles of attack and defensive positions. "We can hold the walls for a day, maybe 2. But we're outnumbered 3 to 1. "We could send for reinforcements," Gideon suggested. "Call in the vassal lords." "Who would arrive in 3 days at the earliest?" Andrew interrupted. "We don't have 3 days." He tapped the map where the Thornwraith camp was marked. "We need to know who hired them. Who wants Alexa badly enough to wage war for her?" "With respect, Your Majesty," Kern said carefully, "does it matter? They're here. They want the girl. We either surrender her or fight." "We fight," Andrews said flatly. "That's not up for debate. Then we need every advantage." Gideon's expression was grim, including understanding what the princess can do. That light she conjured, if she can do it again. "She's not a weapon," Andrew cut in sharply. "She's the only thing that drove them back," Gideon countered. "Your Majesty, I respect your feelings for the girl. But we're talking about the survival of everyone in this castle. If she has power that can help us." "She doesn't know how to control it," Andrew said. "She barely knows what it is. Throwing her into battle and hoping she magically saves us is not a strategy." "Then what is?" Gideon's frustration was showing. "Because right now, we're sitting ducks waiting for dawn." Andrew's jaw tightened. His captain was right, and they both knew it. But the thought of putting Alexa in danger, of using her as a tool rather than protecting her, made something primal in his chest snarl with rejection. The wolf in him recognized its mate. And wolves protected their mates above all else. "There might be another option," a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to find Mira entering, leaning on her walking staff. The healer's face was grave. "The Chronicle of Thorns," she continued. "There's more written there than just the curse. There's also the counter-curse, the ritual that was supposed to break it." Andrew frowned. "I've read that chronicle cover to cover. There's no ritual described." "Not described," Mira agreed. "Hidden. Protected by magic so that only those with the right blood could see it." She looked directly at Andrew. "You needed the thread-bound heart to reveal the words." Understanding dawned cold and sharp. "Alexa, bring her and the chronicle to my workshop," Mira said. "If I'm right, when she touches those pages, we'll finally see the full truth of what was done to your bloodline and how to undo it." Andrew didn't hesitate. "Gideon, you have command of the defenses. Kern, double the watch. If Vesper so much as twitches wrong, I want to know about it." "And you?" Gideon asked. "I'm going to find out how to break a curse properly this time." Andrew was already moving toward the door. And hopefully before dawn. Alexa was still on the tower when Andrew returned, though she'd settled onto a stone bench with Storm's head in her lap. She looked up at his approach, and even in the darkness, he could see the worry in her eyes. What did the scouts say? That tomorrow is going to be difficult, Andrew said honestly. But we might have found something. Mira thinks you can reveal hidden text in the Curse Chronicle, text that explains how to break it completely. Alexa stood immediately. Then let's go. It might be dangerous, Andrew warned. The magic protecting those words could react unpredictably. More dangerous than a siege at dawn? Alexa raised an eyebrow. I'll take my chances with mysterious magic words. Despite everything, Andrew smiled. You're remarkably brave for someone who accidentally wandered into a cursed forest. I'm remarkably stubborn, Alexa corrected. There's a difference. They made their way through the castle's winding corridors to Myra's workshop, a cluttered room filled with herbs, crystals, and various magical implements that hummed with latent power. The healer had already cleared a space on her central table and laid out the Chronicle of Thorns. Princess Mira greeted. Please sit. Place your hands on the book. Alexa did as instructed, her palms flat against the cracked leather cover. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the book began to glow. Soft golden light seeped from beneath Alexa's fingers, spreading across the cover like liquid sunlight. The leather warmed, and the pages began turning on their own, flipping rapidly until they reached a section near the middle. Words appeared not written in ink, but etched in light that hung above the pages like ghostly script. Andrew leaned in, reading aloud. Hear the truth of the Thornwolf curse, spoken in blood and sealed in shadow. Long ago, the Alpha King Kristoff Thorn was blessed with a mate of extraordinary power, a woman born of old magic, neither fully human nor wholly fey. Her name was Seraphine, and she was the heart that bound his soul. But the king's enemies coveted her power. They stole her away, tore her from the bond, and in doing so, fractured something fundamental in the world's weave. Kristoff died of a broken heart within days, and his grief rage cursed his entire bloodline. The curse decreed, no male heir shall live to see his full maturity, for they shall seek their stolen heart across lifetimes and die searching. The thread-bound heart was not lost, it was scattered. Reborn again and again, seeking its wolf king, never remembering why. To break the curse, 3 trials must be met. First, the thread-bound heart must freely choose the wolf king, not from duty but from truth. Second, the wolf king must trust the heart with his life, surrendering control to fate. Third, both must face the shadow-bound, those who stole the heart originally, and reclaim what was taken. Only when the bond is remade fully will the curse break and the bloodline heal. But beware, the shadow-bound still hunt the heart. They will not surrender their prize willingly. Silence filled the workshop as the glowing words faded. Seraphine, Alexa whispered. I'm her. Her soul reborn, Mira said gently. The curse has been pulling you toward Andrew across lifetimes, but only now did the timing align for you both to meet before his death. Andrew's mind was racing. The Shadowbound. That's who hired the Thornwraiths. They want to prevent the curse from breaking, Gideon said from the doorway. He'd followed them down. If Alexa completes the trials, they lose whatever power they gained from stealing Seraphine in the first place. Which means they'll do anything to stop us, Andrew said grimly. Alexa was still staring at the book, her expression unreadable. 3 trials. The first is choice, I already chose to save you. That's done. The second is trust, Andrew said, meeting her eyes. I have to surrender control and trust fate. Trust you. And the third is facing whoever did this. Alexa's voice hardened. Reclaiming what was taken. If we survive the siege, Gideon pointed out. We'll survive, Andrew said with certainty. Because now he understood. The curse wasn't trying to kill him, it was trying to bring Alexa to him. And now that she was here, he'd be damned if he let anyone take her away. Dawn is 3 hours away, Mira said. I suggest you both rest while you can. Tomorrow we'll test everything you are. Andrew nodded, but as they left the workshop, he caught Alexa's hand. Are you all right? Finding out you're the reincarnation of an ancient magical being is a lot. I'm terrified, Alexa admitted. But also, it makes sense. Why I felt pulled to the forest. Why touching you felt so natural. Why I'm not running screaming from all of this. She squeezed his hand. I think part of me has been looking for you my whole life. I just didn't know it. Andrew pulled her closer, unable to help himself. I've been dying my whole life. But now I think I know what I was waiting for. What? A reason to live. The words hung between them, honest and raw. Then Alexa rose on her toes and kissed his cheek, just a brief touch, but it sent electricity racing through Andrew's entire body. Don't die tomorrow, she whispered. We still have a curse to break. And a third trial to face, Andrew added, his voice rough. Together, Alexa said firmly. Together, he agreed. And as dawn crept closer, bringing war and blood and the final test of their newly discovered bond, Andrew Thorne felt something he hadn't experienced in his entire cursed life. Hope. Dawn broke blood-red over the Ashenwood, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Alexa stood on the battlements beside Andrew, watching the Thornwraith army assemble for their final assault. The mercenaries had spent the night building siege towers and battering rams, and now they formed ranks with military precision, a dark tide waiting to crash against the castle walls. Vesper sat astride his midnight horse at the army's head, his skull mask gleaming in the early light. Even from this distance, Alexa could feel his attention fixed on her like a predator marking prey. They're not holding back this time, Gideon observed, his hand resting on his sword hilt. This is a killing strike. Good, Andrew said coldly. I'm tired of playing defensive. He turned to his assembled forces, warriors, wolves, and shamans all standing ready. Today we show them what happens when you threaten the Ashenwood. No mercy. No retreat. We hold this castle or we die trying. A roar of approval rose from his warriors. Alexa felt storm press against her leg, solid and reassuring. The massive wolf hadn't left her side since last night, and now two more wolves, a silver female named Mist and a scarred male called Fong, flanked her other side. They'd claimed her as pack, and wolves protected their own. Remember the plan, Andrew said quietly, just for her. Stay behind the lines. If things go badly, Storm will get you to the escape tunnel. I'm not running, Alexa said firmly. I know. But I need to know you'll survive this. His amber eyes held hers. The curse isn't fully broken yet. If I fall, you won't. But if I do, he pressed gently, you need to live long enough to complete the trials. Find another way to face the Shadowbound. Break this curse for good so no other Thorn King has to die young. Alexa grabbed the front of his armor, pulling him down until they were eye to eye. Listen to me, Wolf King. We are completing those trials together, which means you're going to survive this battle. Understood. Despite the approaching doom, Andrew smiled. Has anyone ever told you you're terrifying when you're determined? You're the first. She released his armor, but didn't step back. Don't make me have to save you again. I'll do my best. His hand found hers, squeezing once. Then he raised his voice to carry across the battlements. Archers ready. 50 bows creaked as arrows were nocked. Below, Vesper raised his gauntlet hand. Time seemed to slow. Then his hand fell, and hell came with it. The Thornwraith army surged forward with a roar that shook the earth. Siege towers rolled toward the walls, propelled by dark magic that made the wheels turn faster than horses could run. Battering rams followed, their heads carved into demon shapes that screamed as they moved. Loose, Andrew commanded. Arrows darkened the sky, falling like deadly rain into the advancing army. Thornwraiths fell by the dozens, but more kept coming, their armor protecting them from anything less than perfect shots. The first siege tower reached the wall. Hooks slammed into stone, and armored mercenaries poured out, weapons drawn and eyes burning with the fervor of promised gold. Andrew met them at the tower's head, his sword singing as it cut through the first wave. His movements were poetry written in violence, every strike precise, every block timed perfectly. Gideon fought at his right, while wolves tore into the enemy ranks with savage joy. But there were too many. For every Thornwraith they cut down, 3 more climbed the towers. The walls became a churning mass of bodies and blood, steel clashing against steel, screams mixing with war cries. Alexa watched from her position, flanked by her wolf guard, feeling utterly helpless. The power that had saved Andrew last night felt distant now, just out of reach. She tried to summon it, focusing on the warmth she'd felt when the light had poured from her hands. Nothing happened. "Come on," she muttered. "Work. Please work." Storm whined softly, sensing her frustration. Then she saw him. Vesper had dismounted and was climbing one of the siege towers himself, moving with supernatural grace. He reached the battlements and cut through 3 of Andrew's warriors before anyone could react. His blade was wreathed in shadow magic, and every strike corroded armor and flesh alike. He was heading directly for Andrew. Alexa's heart stopped. The 2 warriors met in a clash of steel and magic. Andrew's blessed blade held against Vesper's shadow weapon, but barely. The Thornwraith commander was faster than anyone Alexa had ever seen. He moved like smoke, impossible to pin down, his attacks coming from angles that shouldn't have been possible. Andrew blocked, parried, struck back, but he was being driven backward. Toward the inner edge of the battlements. Toward a fatal fall. "No," Alexa breathed. Vesper's blade slipped past Andrew's guard and carved a line across his ribs. Blood bloomed against the king's armor, and he staggered. "Andrew!" Alexa screamed. Power exploded through her. Not the gentle light from before, but something primal and fierce, golden fire that erupted from her skin and rolled across the battlements like a tidal wave. It crashed into Vesper, sending him flying backward into his own warriors. The shadow magic around his blade sputtered and died, and for the first time, Alexa heard the commander curse. But the power didn't stop. It poured from Alexa in waves, washing over the entire battlefield. Every Thornwraith it touched screamed and fell back, their weapons clattering from burned hands. The siege towers began to smoke and crack, dark magic unraveling under the assault of pure light. Andrew's warriors felt it too, but instead of pain, they felt strength, renewed energy flooding their limbs, wounds closing, exhaustion vanishing. The wolves howled in triumph, their eyes blazing brighter than ever. Alexa collapsed to her knees, the power cutting off as suddenly as it had appeared. Her vision swam, and she would have fallen if Storm hadn't been there to catch her. Through her dimming sight, she saw Vesper stagger to his feet, his skull mask cracked and smoking. His voice carried across the sudden silence. "Fall back. Regroup at the forest line." The Thornwraiths retreated in disarray, dragging their wounded and leaving behind siege equipment that was crumbling to ash. Andrew was at Alexa's side in seconds, his hands gentle on her face. "Alexa. Alexa, look at me." She managed to focus on his amber eyes. Did we win?" "You won," he said hoarsely. "That was... I've never seen anything like that." "I saw him hurt you," she whispered. "And I just reacted. You saved us all." Andrew pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious. "You brilliant, terrifying, impossible woman." Gideon approached, bloodied but grinning. "Your Majesty, the Thornwraiths are in full retreat. They're pulling back to the forest." "How long until they regroup?" "Hours, maybe. They lost a third of their forces." Gideon's expression turned serious. "But Vesper survived. He'll come back with a different strategy. Let him." Andrew helped Alexa to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist for support. "We have time now. Time to prepare for the real fight." "The third trial," Alexa said, understanding. "Facing the Shadowbound." "The Thornwraiths are just hired muscle," Andrew agreed. "If we want to end this permanently, we need to strike at whoever is commanding them." Mira appeared, pushing through the crowd of celebrating warriors. Her expression was grave. "Your Majesty, I need to speak with you both. Privately. It's about the third trial." They followed her back to her workshop, where she'd been preparing since dawn. The room now glowed with protective wards, and the Chronicle of Thorns lay open on the table, its pages still shimmering with revealed text. "The third trial requires you to face the Shadowbound and reclaim what was taken," Mira said without preamble. "But the book doesn't specify how to find them." "So we're blind," Gideon said. Not entirely. Mira touched the chronicle, and new words appeared, these ones darker, written in what looked disturbingly like old blood. There's a summoning ritual. You can call the shadow bound to you, force them to manifest, and face you on your terms. That sounds convenient, Andrews said suspiciously. What's the cost? Blood, Mira said quietly. Both of yours, mixed and poured into the earth while speaking the words of binding. It will create a beacon they cannot ignore, a challenge to their claim on Seraphine's soul. They'll bring an army, Gideon protested. Probably, Andrew agreed. But at least we'll know where they're coming from and be ready. Alexa studied the dark words, her stomach churning. When do we do it? Tonight, Mira said. At midnight, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. The ritual must be performed in the place where Seraphine was stolen, the heart of the Ashenwood, where the oldest trees grow. The Whispering Grove, Andrew said, his jaw tightening. It's sacred ground. Dangerous ground. And exactly where we need to be. Alexa looked at him, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. We end this tonight. One way or another. Andrew took her hand, thread his fingers through hers. Together. Always. The hours until midnight passed in a blur of preparation. Andrew's warriors fortified the castle's defenses while he and Alexa rested and recovered their strength. Mira prepared the ritual components, sacred herbs, blessed silver to draw blood, and words of power copied from the chronicle onto parchment. As the moon rose full and pale, Andrew found Alexa in the castle's small chapel, kneeling before a simple altar. She wasn't praying, just sitting in silence, gathering her thoughts. Ready? He asked softly. No, she admitted. But I don't think I ever will be. So let's do it anyway. They rode into the Ashenwood together, accompanied only by Storm and a handful of Andrew's most trusted warriors. The forest was eerily silent, as if every living thing had fled from what was about to happen. The Whispering Grove lived up to its name. Ancient trees that predated kingdoms whispered secrets in languages long forgotten. Moonlight filtered through their branches in silver beams, illuminating a circular clearing where moss grew thick and soft. This is it, Andrew said, dismounting. This is where Kristoff lost Seraphine. Where the curse began. Alexa could feel it, the weight of old sorrow soaked into the earth, the echo of a love torn apart. Then this is where we remake the bond and end it. Mira stepped forward with the ritual components. Stand in the center, facing each other. When I give you the blade, each of you will cut your palm. Then clasp hands and let your blood mix on the ground while speaking the words together. Andrew and Alexa moved into position. The wolves formed a protective circle around the clearing, their eyes scanning the darkness for threats. Gideon stood ready with sword drawn. Whatever happens, we're with you. Mira handed Andrew the blessed silver blade, then gave Alexa the parchment with the summoning words. Once you begin, you cannot stop. The ritual will pull the shadow bound here whether you complete it or not. So speak clearly, speak truly, and do not let go of each other no matter what comes. Andrew met Alexa's eyes across the short distance between them. In the moonlight, she looked ethereal, part human, part something ancient and powerful. His mate. His thread-bound heart. His future. Last chance to run, he said with a slight smile. Not a chance, Wolf King. She smiled back. Let's go reclaim a soul. He drew the blade across his palm, hissing at the sharp sting. Blood welled immediately, dark and rich in the moonlight. Alexa took the blade with steady hands and did the same, not flinching as silver cut skin. They stepped together and clasped hands, their blood mingling and dripping to the moss below. The earth shuddered. Together, they spoke the words of summoning. By blood and bone, by soul and stone, we call the shadows forth from dark unknown. What was stolen, we reclaim. What was broken, we remake. By ancient right and bonded might, face us now or flee our light. The words rang through the grove like bells, echoing off the ancient trees and spreading into the night. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the darkness between the trees began to move. Not natural shadow, but something alive, something hungry and ancient and very, very angry. It coalesced at the edge of the clearing, forming shapes that hurt to look at directly. 5 figures emerged from the darkness. They looked almost human, but wrong in ways that made Alexa's eyes water. Their faces shifted between youth and age, beauty and decay. Their eyes were empty voids that swallowed light, and their presence made the air itself feel heavy and cold. The Shadowbound. The leader stepped forward, a woman whose face flickered between dozens of different identities, as if she'd stolen and worn so many lives she'd forgotten her original one. When she spoke, her voice was many voices layered together. "You dare summon us, little wolf. You dare challenge our claim." "I dare," Andrew said, his voice steady despite the primal fear crawling up his spine. "You stole what wasn't yours. You shattered a bond and cursed my bloodline. Tonight, we take it back." The shadow-bound woman laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "Foolish child. Seraphine belonged to us long before she was bound to your weak ancestor. Her power was ours by right of discovery, ours by conquest." "She was a person, not property," Alexa said, her voice ringing clear. "And I'm her soul reborn. Which means I choose who I belong to." She squeezed Andrew's hand tighter, and power flared where their blood mingled, golden light that pushed back the oppressive darkness. "I choose him. I choose this bond. I choose to break your claim forever." The shadow-bound recoiled, hissing like serpents. "You cannot break what is already shattered." The bond died with Kristoff. The bond was fractured, Myra's voice rang out from behind them. "But not destroyed. It has been waiting, calling across lifetimes, seeking to remake itself. And now, finally, it has." The healer raised her hands, and the grove responded. The ancient trees began to glow with the same golden light emanating from Andrew and Alexa's clasped hands. The moss beneath their feet brightened until the entire clearing blazed like captured sunlight. "This is sacred ground," Mira continued, "where bonds are made eternal. You have no power here, Shadowbound. Not anymore." "No." The lead Shadowbound lunged forward, darkness trailing from her hands like smoke. "She is Ouress." But she couldn't reach them. The light formed a barrier, solid as stone, that sent her flying backward. The other Shadowbound tried as well, attacking from different angles, but the barrier held firm. Andrew felt it then, the bond completing. Not just the surface connection that had saved his life, but something deeper. Permanent. He felt Alexa's heartbeat as if it were his own, felt her determination and fear and love all tangled together with his own emotions until he couldn't tell where he ended and she began. "Now," Mira commanded. "Speak the words of binding." Andrew and Alexa spoke together, their voices perfectly synchronized. "By moon and stars, by earth and sky, we forge this bond that cannot die. 2 souls made one, one fate made whole, forever bound, heart to soul." The light exploded outward in a shockwave that knocked the Shadowbound off their feet. Andrew and Alexa's blood, pooled on the moss below, burst into flame, not burning, but transforming. The flame rose up between them, wrapping around their joined hands, weaving itself into their skin in delicate patterns like silver tattoos. The bond mark. The physical manifestation of their completed soul connection. The Shadowbound screamed as the light consumed their darkness, burning away their claim on Seraphine's stolen power. They flickered, becoming translucent, their forms unable to maintain themselves without the stolen magic that had sustained them for generations. "You've doomed yourselves," the leader shrieked. "The power was contained. Now it will consume you both." But Andrew felt no consumption, no destruction. He felt whole for the first time in his life. Complete. As if a piece of himself he'd never known was missing had finally clicked into place. Beside him, Alexa gasped as power flooded through her, not foreign or frightening, but familiar. Like remembering something she'd always known but forgotten. The Shadowbound dissolved into nothingness, their screams fading into silence. And in their wake, the grove filled with warmth and life. Flowers bloomed in impossible profusion, the trees sang with wind that carried no words, but infinite meaning, and the moon shone brighter than it had in generations. The curse was broken. Truly, completely, permanently broken. Andrew pulled Alexa into his arms, both of them trembling with relief and residual power. "Is it done? Tell me it's done." It's done, Mira confirmed, tears streaming down her weathered face. The bond is complete. The curse is ended. And the Thorn bloodline is finally free. Alexa laughed, a sound of pure joy, and kissed Andrew. Not on the cheek this time, but full and fierce, pouring every emotion she couldn't name into that connection. He kissed her back, one hand tangling in her copper hair, the other pressed against the small of her back, holding her close enough that he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexa pressed her forehead to his. So, we broke an ancient curse, defeated shadow creatures, and completed a soul bond. Just another Tuesday in the Ashenwood, Andrew managed, his voice rough with emotion. I'm never leaving, she said suddenly. This forest, this castle, I'm staying. Good. Andrew's arms tightened around her. Because I wasn't going to let you leave anyway. Possessive Wolf King. Reckless, thread-bound heart. They stood there in the glowing grove, surrounded by ancient trees and faithful wolves, while their warriors cheered and Mira wiped away happy tears. The curse that had haunted 5 generations was finally, blessedly over. And the love that had been stolen centuries ago was finally, perfectly restored. The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.